Hello, everyone. My name is Cianciulli, and I am with the CREM Group. I'm the managing broker. The CREM Group is a specialty real estate firm focusing exclusively on probate, trust, bankruptcy, and receivership sales. I work with primarily sellers who are personal representatives of estates, trustees, executors, and administrators. In addition to that, I'm lucky enough to work with a lot of great professionals across the LA landscape, which include trust and estates attorneys, bankruptcy attorneys, bankruptcy trustees, receivers, and private professional fiduciaries. I've been doing this for nearly a decade, and prior to this, I was an attorney, and prior to that, I was a CPA, and I like to say that I took the scenic route to becoming a realtor, although that glorifies it a little bit, I think. And I was tasked to give a brief update on the local residential real estate market. All right, and in doing so, I want to start by looking at the change in home values in the last year. And more importantly, I want to look at the major factors that have influenced those home value changes. So to begin, let's look at the changes in home values in LA as well as the San Fernando Valley. As you can see, the change for both is approximately down 4%. So I don't know about everyone, but to me, it intuitively felt like value should be down more, given the constant interest rate hike updates and the continual economic uncertainty warnings in the news, which of course are always accurate. Case in point, the hurricane that just decimated LA. But I think it becomes clear as to why things are the way that they are when we look at the 5 major factors that I've outlined for us. So to begin, the first factor, I want to look at some migration trends. For instance, California has had a net loss of 400,000 residents throughout 2001 and 2002, and this was the first time ever, essentially, that more people exited California than entered. And as you can see in the graphic, more people are moving out of the lighter shaded states and into the darker shaded shades, primarily moving to states like Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Florida, the Carolinas, Idaho, Washington. And so why are people leaving California? I thought about that. It's probably a presentation in and of itself, but I'll give you the super short version. Politics, taxes, climate, affordability, and jobs, which includes an unprecedentedly high ability to work remotely. I think that played a major role in that exit in the last couple of years. The next slide depicts basically the same trend, just from LA instead of California as a whole, except it looks like former Los Angelinos prefer Georgia and Tennessee or Kentucky, Tennessee. I think that's Tennessee. I went to public school. So let's see. The next slide, and this is factor number 2 that contributes to the change in home values, is mortgage rates. Mortgage rates have increased to approximately 7%, and I'm talking about, of course, a 30-year fixed mortgage, which is the highest point in over 2 decades. And for a little context, last year we were looking at rates at around 5%, 2 years ago, 3%. And I think it's important to illustrate a simple but significant point. Let's take a $1 million home purchase, 20% down. We would be looking at a $3,400 monthly mortgage payment at 3% interest rates, whereas at 7%, we're looking at about $5,300. So approximately a $2,000 difference, 56% increase. I mean, that is very significant and plays a major role, obviously, in the change in home values over the last couple of years. Factor number 3, population in LA County. Even with the modest dip in the last couple years, LA's population is just under 10 million. And for the developers in the room, that is 3,000 people per square mile in the county of LA, 8,000 people per square mile in the city of LA, and 6,000 people per square mile in the San Fernando Valley. And I don't know about everyone here, but my perception has always been that people move to the valley for space. But I think that's no longer the case, given those numbers. Factor number 4, housing supply. In addition to interest rates, probably the biggest factor that's going to dictate pricing. Currently, we have around 7,600 active listings, residential listings, down from 5,600 in late 2018. So let's compare 10 million people, 7,600 active listings. That's, even if 5% of that population are home buyers, that's still about 66 buyers per listing. Next time you list a house with a realtor, you should ask them why you don't have 66 offers on the table. Not if I'm that realtor, but you should definitely ask that question. Factor number 5, rental prices. 2 years ago, a two-bedroom averaged $2,900 a month in LA, and now that is at $3,400 a month, about a 17% increase. It's easy to see why someone would rationalize to buy versus rent. So let me just recap some of these factors real quick. Factor number 1, we have a net loss migration putting downward pressure on prices. We have factor number 2, a substantial increase in interest rates putting downward pressure on price. General population buyer pool in LA, 10 million people, 6,000 people per square mile in the valley. Couple this with realities that millennials are finally getting their act together and buying homes. Investor buying is at an all-time high right now. So that's putting upward pressure on price. Housing supply, as I mentioned, 7,600 active listings in LA. Again, 66 buyers per listing. Couple this with realities like owners want to hold on to their attractive low fixed rates. Also, the fact that baby boomers are aging in place, fewer moving to senior living communities, and just generally newer construction lagging behind demand. And then finally, as we just talked about, rents are at an all-time high, $3,400 as of late, and that just happens to be the same amount that a mortgage was at $1 million purchase at 3%. That is just a happy coincidence. Next, and finally, I thought I'd talk about a hot topic pretty much for the last year, and that is Measure ULA, also known as the mansion tax. This is basically for anyone, I'm sure everyone knows, but just in case, this is a city transfer tax for sales over $5 million, primarily to combat homelessness. The city has projected between 600 and $1 billion plus in revenue from this program, and it went into effect April 1st of this year. And then down below, we have basically this delineated numerically. For sales under 5 million, you're looking at about 0.5% in transfer tax. You're looking at just under 5. If you're between 5 and 10 million, and over 10 million, you're looking at just about 6. Real quick example, $1 million sale, $5,600 in transfer taxes. $5 million sale, $228,000 in transfer tax. So sale value times 5, transfer tax times 50. $10 million sale, $600,000 transfer tax, home value times 10, transfer tax times a lot. And let's see, looking back at Measure ELA, like I said, projections were about $55 to $60 million a month in revenue. So far, looking back at just under 5 months, there's been about 500 million transacted residentially, which is translated to about 5.5 million per month. So you can tell that those, granted this excludes commercial numbers, but you can see that those are far under projections. And while it makes sense that there would be a cooling effect, I think that's going to continue in large part because of my last point, and that is multiple lawsuits challenging this, challenging the constitutionality of this. If successful, those sellers along this period essentially will be entitled to a refund. There is a procedure for it, but they'll be entitled to it. And if that doesn't succeed, we have another way of potentially repealing this retroactively, and that is on the 2024 ballot, there will be an initiative that would retroactively repeal any special taxes like Measure ULA that didn't pass over 66% vote, and Measure ULA was like somewhere around 57, 58%. So that is it. That is your 10-minute update in 13 minutes. Any questions?